Lisa Harper wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and looked at the engine one more time. The old van had been making strange noises for the last 50 miles, and now it had finally given up completely. She pulled over to the side of the highway and turned off the engine. The silence was immediate and complete except for the sound of wind blowing across the empty desert road. She stepped out of the van and stretched her back. The sun was getting low in the sky, painting the mountains in the distance a deep orange color. She had been driving for 12 hours straight, trying to get to her new job in California. The moving company had told her the van would make the trip without any problems, but here she was, stuck on a lonely highway with night coming fast. Lisa opened the hood and looked at the engine. She had been working on cars and trucks since she was 16 years old, so she knew what to look for. The problem was obvious right away. The water pump had failed, and coolant was leaking all over the engine block. She would need to replace the pump, but she had spare parts in the back of the van. She always carried extra parts when she traveled long distances. She pulled off her jacket and rolled up the sleeves of her tank top. The tattoo on her left shoulder was now visible in the afternoon light. It was a complex design that covered most of her upper arm and shoulder. Most people who saw it thought it was just decorative, but it was much more than that. The symbols and patterns told a story that she could never share with anyone. Lisa got her toolbox from the back of the van and started working on the engine. She had done this repair many times before, so her hands moved quickly and efficiently. She removed the old water pump and cleaned the mounting surface. The new pump would need to seal perfectly, or the engine would overheat again. As she worked, she noticed a convoy of military vehicles approaching from the direction she had come. There were 3 black SUVs with tinted windows moving fast but not using their emergency lights. She could see a military base in the distance, so she assumed they were coming from there. She kept working and ignored the vehicles as they passed, but the convoy slowed down and stopped about 50 yards past her van. Lisa looked up from the engine and saw one of the SUVs backing up toward her. She wiped her hands on a rag and waited to see what they wanted. Maybe they were offering to help, or maybe they were just checking to make sure she was not a security threat near the military base. The middle SUV stopped next to her van, and the rear door opened. A man in a military uniform stepped out. He was tall and had gray hair, and his uniform had many ribbons and insignia. Lisa could tell he was a high-ranking officer, probably a general or colonel. He looked at her for a moment. Then his eyes moved to her tattoo. The officer's expression changed completely when he saw the tattoo. His face went pale and his mouth opened slightly. He stared at the symbols on her arm for several seconds without saying anything. Lisa felt uncomfortable under his intense gaze, but she did not cover the tattoo. She had learned long ago that hiding it only made people more curious. The officer walked closer to her van, and Lisa could see his name tag clearly now. It said Blake, and he had 3 stars on his collar. He was definitely a general. His aide, a younger officer with captain's bars, followed him but stayed a few steps behind. General Blake stopped about 10 feet from Lisa and looked at her tattoo again. Then he did something that shocked her completely. He brought his right hand up to his chest in a very specific way, with his fingers positioned in an unusual pattern. It was not a normal military salute. It was something much more specific and much more secret. Lisa's heart started beating faster when she saw the salute. She had not seen that gesture in 15 years, and she never expected to see it again. Only a very small group of people knew that salute, and most of them were supposed to be dead. She looked at the general's face more carefully and tried to remember if she had ever seen him before. The general held the salute for several seconds, waiting for her response. Lisa looked around to make sure no one else was watching. Then she slowly returned the salute with the exact same hand position. The general's face relaxed and he lowered his hand. "I thought I might be the only one left," the general said quietly. His voice was barely loud enough for Lisa to hear over the wind. "You are not the only one," Lisa replied. She kept her voice low as well. "But there are not many of us." The general's aide looked confused and started to ask a question, but the general held up his hand to stop him. "Captain, please wait by the vehicle. This is a private conversation." The captain looked like he wanted to argue, but he obeyed orders and walked back to the SUV. The general waited until he was out of hearing range before speaking again. "How long has it been since you came back?" the general asked. 15 years, Lisa said. "I came back with the last group in 2010. The general nodded. "I remember that evacuation. I was involved in the planning. We thought we'd gotten everyone out. You got most of us out, Lisa said. But some chose to stay and fight until the end. The general was quiet for a moment, looking at the mountains in the distance. I have been watching the skies ever since, he said, waiting for signs that they might come here. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Have you seen anything? Maybe, the general said. There have been some unusual signals from deep space, things that do not match any known human technology. Lisa closed the hood of her van and picked up her toolbox. The water pump was installed, and the van was ready to drive again. But she was no longer thinking about getting to California. She was thinking about the conversation she was having with this general, who somehow knew about things that were supposed to be classified forever. We should not be talking about this here, Lisa said. Too many people might hear us, the general agreed. You are right. But I need to know what you remember about their technology and their tactics. The official files were all destroyed, but the people who were there still have the knowledge in their heads. Lisa looked at the general for a long moment. She had spent 15 years trying to forget everything that had happened out there among the stars. She had built a new life as a simple mechanic, fixing cars and trucks and trying to blend in with normal people. But now this general was asking her to remember things she had worked very hard to forget. If you really think they are coming here, then we need to talk, Lisa said. But not here and not now. Too dangerous. The general reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. Call this number tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Use a payphone, not your cell phone. Ask for Marcus. Lisa took the card and put it in her pocket without looking at it. How do I know you are really who you say you are? The general smiled for the first time since he had approached her van. Because I know that you served on the mining station at Kepler 442. And I know that you were there when the hegemony attacked. Lisa felt her blood turn cold. No one on Earth was supposed to know those details. The mission had been classified at the highest levels, and everyone who came back had been sworn to secrecy. Hearing those words spoken out loud after 15 years of silence was like hearing a ghost speak. The general turned and walked back to his SUV without saying anything else. Lisa watched as the convoy drove away toward the military base. She stood alone next to her van as the sun disappeared behind the mountains and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Lisa drove through the night without stopping. The van ran smoothly now that she had fixed the water pump, but her mind was not on the road. She kept thinking about the general and the words he had spoken. Kepler 442 was a name she had not heard in 15 years, and hearing it again brought back memories she had tried very hard to bury. She found a small motel just before sunrise and paid for a room with cash. She always used cash when she traveled because it was harder to track. Old habits from her previous life had never really gone away. She pulled the business card from her pocket and looked at it for the first time. It was plain white with only a phone number printed on it. No name, no address, no company logo. Lisa set her alarm for 8 in the evening and tried to sleep, but her dreams were filled with images of distant stars and alien ships. She woke up several times in a cold sweat, remembering battles she had fought in space stations orbiting, planets that most people on Earth did not even know existed. That evening she drove to a truck stop and found a payphone near the back of the parking lot. She dialed the number on the card at exactly 9 o'clock. The phone rang twice before someone answered. Marcus speaking, said a familiar voice. This is the mechanic from yesterday, Lisa said. She did not want to use names over the phone. I was hoping you would call, the general said. We need to meet in person. There are things I need to show you that cannot be discussed over the phone. Where? Lisa asked. Do you know the old diner on Route 95 about 20 miles south of the base? It is called Betty's Place. I can find it, Lisa said. Meet me there tomorrow at noon. Come alone and make sure you are not followed. The line went dead. Lisa hung up the phone and looked around the parking lot. She had been checking for surveillance all day, but she had not seen anything suspicious. Still, she took a roundabout route back to the motel and parked in a different spot than before. The next day, Lisa arrived at Betty's Place 15 minutes early. It was an old-fashioned diner with a gravel parking lot and neon signs that had seen better days. She parked where she could see the road in both directions and waited. At exactly noon, a pickup truck pulled into the lot. General Blake got out wearing civilian clothes instead of his uniform. He looked around carefully before walking into the diner. Lisa waited another 5 minutes, then followed him inside. The diner was nearly empty except for an elderly waitress and a truck driver at the counter. The general was sitting in a booth at the back, facing the door. Lisa slid into the seat across from him. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I was not sure you would." "I almost did not," Lisa replied. "I have spent 15 years trying to forget everything that happened out there." The waitress came over and took their orders. They both asked for coffee and waited until she was gone before continuing their conversation. "I need to know what you remember about their ships and their weapons," the general said. The official records were all destroyed after the evacuation. Lisa looked out the window at the empty highway. "Why were the records destroyed?" "We fought them for 3 years. That intelligence could have been valuable." "The government decided it was too dangerous," the general said. "They were afraid that if the public knew about the colonies and the war, there would be panic. They wanted to pretend that none of it ever happened. But you kept watching," Lisa said. The general nodded. "Someone had to. I knew they would not give up that easily. The hegemony does not leave loose ends." Lisa thought about the mining colonies and the people who had lived there. Thousands of families had volunteered to leave Earth and start new lives on distant worlds. They had been promised safety and prosperity, but instead they had found war and death. "How many of us made it back to Earth?" she asked. "About 400, the general said. "Out of nearly 10,000 colonists and military personnel?" Lisa felt sick. She had known the casualties were high, but she had never known the exact numbers. What happened to the 400 who came back? "They were given new identities and told to disappear into civilian life," the general said. Most of them followed orders. They found jobs, started families, and tried to forget, but some of them stayed in contact with each other. "You have been tracking us," Lisa said. It was not a question. "Not tracking," the general said. "Monitoring. There is a difference. I needed to know who was still alive and where they were living, in case we needed them again." Lisa leaned back in the booth and studied the general's face. "You think we are going to need them again?" "I am certain of it," the general said. "The hegemony has been sending scout ships into our solar system for the past 2 years. They are getting bolder. Last month one of their ships was detected near Mars." "What did your superiors say when you reported this?" The general laughed bitterly. "They said I was seeing things. They refused to believe that the alien threat was real. According to official policy, the colonies never existed and the war never happened." Lisa understood the general's frustration. She had tried to warn people about the hegemony when she first came back to Earth, but no one would listen. Eventually, she had stopped trying and focused on building a normal life. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you to help me contact the other survivors," the general said. "I need to know what they remember about hegemony technology and tactics. If they are planning an invasion, we need to be ready." "Most of the survivors will not want to be contacted," Lisa said. "They have new lives now. Families, jobs, responsibilities. They will not want to remember the war. They will not have a choice if the hegemony comes here," the general said. "Earth's current military has no experience fighting alien technology. The survivors are the only people who know how to fight them and win." Lisa thought about her fellow veterans scattered across the country. She had lost contact with most of them years ago, but she remembered some of their names and faces. They had been soldiers, engineers, pilots, and scientists. They had learned to adapt human technology to fight alien weapons, and they had developed tactics that the hegemony had not expected. "Even if I could contact them, why would they trust you?" Lisa asked. "You are part of the same government that buried their service and denied their sacrifice." "Because I was there too," the general said. "I was the liaison officer between Earth Command and the Colonial Defense Forces. I saw what happened when the hegemony attacked the outer colonies. I saw good people die because Earth would not send reinforcements." Lisa remembered the liaison officers who had visited the colonies during the war. Most of them had been career politicians who did not understand the reality of fighting an alien enemy. But a few had been different. They had listened to the colonial defenders and tried to help. "What was your rank then?" she asked. "Colonel," the general said. "I was assigned to coordinate supply drops and evacuation plans. I spent most of my time trying to convince Earth Command to send more ships and weapons." "Did you ever visit Kepler 442? "Twice," the general said. "Once during the siege and once during the final evacuation." "I remember you from the evacuation. You were one of the last people to leave the station." Lisa felt a chill as she remembered that terrible day. The hegemony had surrounded the station, and the defenders were running out of ammunition and supplies. The evacuation ships had been taking fire as they tried to dock, and many people had died trying to reach them. I stayed to help with the demolition charges, Lisa said. We could not let them capture the station intact. I know, the general said. I recommended you for a medal, but the recommendation was buried along with everything else. They sat in silence for several minutes, both lost in memories of a war that officially never happened. The waitress refilled their coffee cups and left them alone again. If I help you contact the other survivors, what then? Lisa asked. Then we start preparing for war, the general said. We gather intelligence, we train volunteers, and we get ready to defend Earth with or without official support. Lisa looked at the general's hands. They were scarred and weathered, the hands of someone who had seen combat. She made her decision. I will help you, she said, but I have conditions. Name them. First, we do not contact anyone who has children under 18. They have earned the right to protect their families. The general nodded. Agreed. Second, anyone we contact has the right to say no. No pressure, no guilt, no threats. Agreed. Third, if this goes bad, you take responsibility. The survivors have already sacrificed enough. The general was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. Agreed. When can we start? Lisa pulled a small notebook from her pocket and wrote down a phone number. Call me in 3 days. I will have some names and locations for you by then. She stood up and left money on the table for her coffee. And General, next time we meet, I want to see proof that the hegemony is really coming. I am not going to put my friends at risk based on rumors and suspicions. The general nodded. You will have your proof. Lisa walked out of the diner and drove away, leaving the general sitting alone in the booth. She had made a choice that would change her life forever, but she knew it was the right choice. If the hegemony was really coming to Earth, then humanity would need every experienced fighter it could find. Lisa spent the next 3 days driving to different cities and making careful inquiries about people from her past. She had memorized the names and last known locations of 17 survivors from her unit, and she wanted to verify that they were still alive before giving their information to the general. She used public libraries and internet cafes to search for them, always paying with cash and never using the same computer twice. Most of the people she found had built normal lives for themselves. Jack Martinez was working as a high school teacher in Arizona. Susan Cole had become a nurse in Oregon. Danny Wright was running a small farm in Kansas. They had all followed the instructions they received when they returned to Earth. Blend in, stay quiet, and never talk about the war. When Lisa called the general 3 days later, she had located 12 of the 17 survivors on her list. The other 5 had either died or disappeared completely. She arranged to meet the general at a different location, a rest stop on a quiet highway far from any military installations. The general arrived in the same pickup truck, but this time he was not alone. A woman in her 50s was sitting in the passenger seat. She had short gray hair and wore simple civilian clothes, but Lisa could tell from her posture that she was military. The woman stayed in the truck while the general got out. I brought someone I want you to meet, the general said. Her name is Colonel Patricia Stone. She was the intelligence officer for the Colonial Defense Program. Lisa looked at the woman in the truck. She seemed familiar, but Lisa could not place her face. Was she at Kepler 442? She was at all the major battles, the general said. She coordinated intelligence between the different colonies and helped plan the evacuations. The general gestured for the woman to join them. Colonel Stone got out of the truck and walked over. She was carrying a large briefcase and had the same watchful expression that all the veterans shared. I remember you, Colonel Stone said to Lisa. You were the engineer who figured out how to modify the plasma generators to overload their shields. Lisa felt a surge of recognition. You were the one who told us about their communication frequencies. We used that information to jam their targeting systems. The two women shook hands, and Lisa felt some of her suspicion fade away. Colonel Stone had been one of the good officers, someone who actually listened to the people doing the fighting. I have something to show you, Colonel Stone said. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet computer. These are deep space monitoring records from the past 6 months. She handed the tablet to Lisa, who looked at the screen. It showed a star chart with several red dots marked on it. What am I looking at? Unidentified objects moving through our solar system, Colonel Stone said. They appear briefly on our sensors, then disappear. The movement patterns match hegemony scout ships. Lisa studied the data more carefully. The objects were small and fast, and they seemed to be surveying the outer planets. How many? At least 6 different ships, Colonel Stone said. Possibly more. They are being very careful to avoid our main sensor arrays. What does Earth Command say about this? Lisa asked. General Blake snorted. They say it is space debris or sensor malfunctions. They refuse to consider the possibility that we are being scouted by an alien force. Lisa handed the tablet back to Colonel Stone. This could be evidence, but it is not proof. The hegemony uses different technology now. These could be automated probes. There is more, Colonel Stone said. She pulled up another screen on the tablet. 2 weeks ago, we intercepted a transmission from one of these objects. It was heavily encrypted, but we managed to decode part of it. She pressed a button and a series of symbols appeared on the screen. Lisa recognized them immediately. They were hegemony military codes, the same ones she had learned to interpret during the war. This says survey complete, recommend invasion force deployment, Lisa said quietly. The date stamp is recent. General Blake and Colonel Stone exchanged glances. That is what we thought it said, the general said. But we needed confirmation from someone who had actually seen these codes in combat. Lisa felt cold despite the warm afternoon sun. The hegemony was definitely planning to invade Earth, and they were much closer than anyone realized. How long do we have? Based on the transmission patterns, we estimate 6 to 8 months before they begin the main assault, Colonel Stone said. They will probably start with attacks on our satellite networks and orbital installations. We need to warn Earth Command, Lisa said. We tried, General Blake said. I presented this evidence to the Joint Chiefs last week. They said the codes could be fake and the transmissions could be coming from anywhere. They accused me of trying to restart the colonial defense program for personal gain. Lisa understood the general's frustration. The government had worked very hard to erase all evidence of the colonies and the war. Admitting that the hegemony was real would mean admitting that they had lied to the public for 15 years. What about the president? She asked. The president does not know about the colonies, Colonel Stone said. That information is classified above his security level. Only a handful of people in the intelligence community know the truth, and most of them are retired or dead. Lisa walked to her van and leaned against the hood, thinking. The situation was worse than she had imagined. Not only was the hegemony planning to invade, but Earth's government was completely unprepared to defend against them. The official military had no experience with alien technology and no knowledge of hegemony tactics. The survivors are our only hope, she said finally. They are the only people on Earth who know how to fight the hegemony and win. That is why we need your help, General Blake said. We need to contact as many survivors as possible and convince them to help us prepare a defense. Lisa thought about the people she had located during her search. Most of them had built good lives for themselves and would not want to risk everything to fight another war. But they would not have a choice if the hegemony invaded Earth. I found 12 people from my unit, she said, but contacting them will be dangerous. If the government finds out what we are doing, they could arrest all of us for violating our secrecy oaths. We are already violating our secrecy oaths, Colonel Stone said. The question is whether we violate them to save Earth or just to satisfy our consciences. Lisa looked at the tablet again, studying the hegemony transmission. The symbols brought back memories of intercepted communications during the war. The hegemony had been systematic and thorough in their attacks on the colonies, and they would be the same way with Earth. They will start by destroying our communications and navigation satellites, she said. Then they will attack our power grids and transportation networks. They want to isolate us and make it impossible for us to coordinate a defense. How long will that take? General Blake asked. If they follow the same pattern they used against the colonies, about 2 weeks, Lisa said. After that, they will begin landing ground forces in major population centers. Can we stop them? Lisa was quiet for a long moment. During the war, the colonists had learned to use guerrilla tactics against the hegemony. They had been outnumbered and outgunned, but they had been fighting on familiar ground with nothing to lose. Earth would be different. The population was much larger, but most people had no military training and no experience with warfare. We can hurt them, she said finally, but stopping them completely will require help from the official military. We need ships, weapons, and trained personnel. What if we cannot get official support? Colonel Stone asked. Then we do what we did in the colonies, Lisa said. We hit them hard and fast, then disappear before they can respond. We make them pay for every mile of ground they take. General Blake nodded. That is what I was hoping you would say. Will you help us contact the other survivors? Lisa made her decision. Yes, but we do this carefully. We approach them one at a time and we give them complete information so they can make informed choices. Agreed, the general said. How do we start? Lisa pulled out her notebook and tore out a page. She wrote down a name and address and handed it to the general. Start with Jack Martinez in Arizona. He was a combat engineer, and he knows more about hegemony technology than anyone else I know. What should we tell him? Tell him the truth, Lisa said. Show him the evidence and let him decide for himself. But be careful. If he says no, you have to respect that decision and leave him alone. Colonel Stone put the tablet back in her briefcase. What about you? Are you willing to come with us when we make contact? I will come, Lisa said. These people trusted me during the war, and they deserve to hear this from someone they know. The three of them spent the next hour planning their approach. They would travel in separate vehicles and meet at predetermined locations. They would use code words and signals to communicate, and they would have escape plans in case something went wrong. As they prepared to leave, Colonel Stone pulled Lisa aside. There is something else you should know, she said quietly. Some of the survivors have been having dreams. What kind of dreams? Dreams about the war. Dreams about the hegemony returning. Several of them have contacted me in the past year, asking if I had heard anything unusual. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had been having similar dreams for months, but she had assumed they were just nightmares caused by stress. How many? At Lay, the meeting with Jack Martinez took place in a small diner outside Phoenix. Lisa arrived first and chose a table near the back where she could watch the entrance. She had not seen Jack in 15 years, but she recognized him immediately when he walked through the door. He was taller and heavier than she remembered, with gray streaks in his dark hair. But he still had the same careful way of moving that all combat veterans shared. Jack spotted her right away and walked over to her table. He sat down across from her and studied her face for a moment before speaking. I was hoping I would never see you again, he said quietly. I was hoping the same thing, Lisa replied. But we do not always get what we hope for. General Blake and Colonel Stone arrived 10 minutes later. They sat at a nearby table and pretended to be strangers. But Lisa could see them watching her conversation with Jack. She had insisted on talking to Jack alone first, to gauge his reaction before involving the others. You look good, Jack said. What have you been doing for the past 15 years? Fixing cars and trucks, Lisa said. Trying to live a normal life. What about you? Teaching high school physics, Jack said. I have a wife and 2 kids now. Normal life, just like they told us to do. Lisa could hear the satisfaction in his voice, but she could also hear something else, a tension that had not been there before. How are the dreams? She asked. Jack's expression changed immediately. How did you know about the dreams? Because I have been having them too, Lisa said. And so have other people from the program. Jack was quiet for a moment, looking out the window at the parking lot. They started about 6 months ago, he said. At first I thought they were just nightmares, but they are too detailed and too consistent. It is like I am seeing real events. What do you see in the dreams? Ships, Jack said. Hegemony ships moving through our solar system. They are mapping our defenses and choosing targets. He looked back at Lisa. Please tell me these are just nightmares. Lisa felt her heart sink. If Jack was having the same dreams as the other survivors, then the hegemony threat was even more immediate than they had thought. I wish I could tell you that, but I cannot. She gestured for General Blake and Colonel Stone to join them. Jack tensed when he saw them approaching, but he did not try to leave. The general and colonel sat down at their table, and Lisa made the introductions. Jack Martinez. This is General Marcus Blake and Colonel Patricia Stone. They were both involved in the Colonial Defense Program. Jack shook hands with both officers, but his expression remained guarded. What do you want from me? General Blake leaned forward and spoke quietly. We want to show you some evidence that the hegemony is preparing to invade Earth. I do not need to see evidence, Jack said. I can feel them out there. The question is what we are going to do about it. Colonel Stone opened her briefcase and pulled out the tablet. We are trying to contact as many survivors as possible and prepare a defense, but we need people with your expertise. She showed Jack the deep space monitoring data and the intercepted transmissions. He studied the information carefully, asking technical questions about the sensor readings and communication protocols. Lisa could see his engineer's mind working through the implications. "This is definitely hegemony technology," Jack said finally. "But it is more advanced than what we faced during the war. They have been improving their systems over the past 15 years. What does that mean for our chances?" General Blake asked. Jack was quiet for a long moment. "It means we are in serious trouble. During the war, we barely held them off with everything we had. If they are more advanced now and Earth has no defenses, we could be looking at complete defeat." "That is why we need you," Lisa said. "You understand their technology better than anyone. You could help us develop countermeasures." Jack shook his head. "I have a family now, Lisa. I cannot just walk away from my responsibilities and go fight another war." "You may not have a choice," Colonel Stone said. "If the hegemony invades, they will not distinguish between combatants and civilians. Everyone on Earth will be a target." "What makes you think a handful of survivors can make any difference?" Jack asked. "We are talking about a planetary invasion force against maybe a few hundred people." General Blake pulled out a folder and spread several photographs on the table. They showed military installations, weapons depots, and research facilities scattered across the United States. "We are not talking about just a few hundred people. I have been building a network of allies within the military for years. There are people in key positions who remember the colonial program and understand the threat." "How many people?" "About 2,000 military personnel across all branches of service," the general said. "Most of them are in technical positions where they can access equipment and information without attracting attention." Jack studied the photographs. "What about weapons and equipment?" "The hegemony has energy shields and plasma weapons. Our conventional military technology will not be effective against them." "We have been working on that problem too," Colonel Stone said. She pulled up another file on her tablet. "Some of the research from the colonial program was preserved in classified archives. We have been quietly developing new weapons based on that technology." She showed them technical drawings and test results for modified missiles and energy weapons. The designs looked familiar to Lisa. They were based on modifications that the colonists had developed during the war. "This looks promising," Jack said. "But developing weapons is only part of the problem. You also need tactics and strategy. The hegemony does not fight like human armies. That is where the survivors come in," General Blake said. "You are the only people on Earth who have actually fought them and won." Lisa thought about the battles she had fought at Kepler 442 and the other colonies. The hegemony had superior technology, but they had also been predictable. They followed standard attack patterns and had difficulty adapting to unexpected tactics. "We won some battles," she said, "but we lost the war. They eventually overran all the colonies." "You lost because you were outnumbered and cut off from reinforcements," Colonel Stone said. "On Earth, we will have more resources and a larger population to draw from." Jack closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. Lisa could see the internal struggle he was facing. He wanted to protect his family, but he also understood the threat they were all facing. "If I agree to help, what would you want me to do?" he asked. "We need you to review our technical plans and help us improve our weapons," General Blake said. "We also need you to help train our people in hegemony technology and tactics." "Where would this happen?" "We have access to several secure facilities," Colonel Stone said. "Places where we can work without government interference." Jack opened his eyes and looked at Lisa. "What about you? Are you committed to this?" "I am committed," Lisa said. "The hegemony will not stop with Earth if they succeed here. They will keep expanding until they control the entire galaxy. Someone has to make a stand." Jack was quiet for several minutes, thinking. Finally, he nodded. "I will help, but I have conditions." "Name them," General Blake said. "First, my family gets protection. If this goes bad, I want them evacuated to a safe location." "Agreed." "Second, I want to review all your technical plans before I commit to any specific project. Some of the weapons we developed during the war were too dangerous to use." "Agreed." "Third, if the government offers official support for this program, I want full pardons for everyone involved. We should not have to choose between saving Earth and going to prison." General Blake hesitated. "I cannot guarantee pardons, but I will do everything in my power to protect the people who help us." Jack studied the general's face, then nodded. "That will have to be good enough." They spent the next 2 hours discussing technical details and operational plans. Jack asked penetrating questions about their resources and capabilities, and he offered suggestions for improving their weapons and tactics. Lisa could see why he had been such an effective engineer during the war. As they prepared to leave, Colonel Stone handed Jack a secure phone. "This is encrypted and untraceable. We will contact you within a week with more details about our first project." Jack pocketed the phone and shook hands with everyone at the table. "I hope we know what we are doing. We are the only people on Earth who have a chance of stopping them," Lisa said. "That has to be enough." After Jack left, the 3 remaining conspirators sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, General Blake spoke. "One down, 11 to go. It will get easier," Colonel Stone said. "Once we have a few people committed, others will be more willing to join." Lisa was not so sure. Every survivor they contacted would be facing the same difficult choice that Jack had made. They would have to decide between the safety of their families and the survival of their species. "The next person on my list is Susan Cole in Oregon," she said. "She was a communications specialist. If we can convince her to help, she could set up secure networks for coordinating our operations." "When can we contact her?" General Blake asked. "Give me a few days to make some discreet inquiries," Lisa said. "I want to make sure she is still clean before we approach her." They left the diner separately. Over the next month, Lisa and the 2 officers traveled across the country making contact with former colonial veterans. Each meeting was carefully planned and executed with military precision. They used different vehicles, different routes, and different cover stories to avoid detection by government surveillance. Susan Cole was running a small veterinary clinic in Oregon when they found her. She had been a communications specialist during the war, responsible for maintaining contact between the scattered colonial outposts. When General Blake showed her the intercepted hegemony transmissions, she immediately recognized the encryption patterns. "They are using the same communication protocols they used 15 years ago," Susan said, studying the data on Colonel Stone's tablet. "But the signal strength is much stronger than it should be if these ships are operating from the edge of the solar system." "What does that mean?" Lisa asked. "It means they are closer than you think," Susan said. "Based on these signal readings, I would estimate that at least some of their ships are operating inside the orbit of Jupiter." The news was worse than any of them had expected. If hegemony ships were already that close to Earth, the invasion could begin much sooner than their original estimates. "How long do we have?" General Blake asked. Susan ran some quick calculations on the tablet. "If they follow their standard deployment pattern, maybe 3 months. Possibly less," Colonel Stone made notes in her secure notebook. "We need to accelerate our recruitment schedule. We cannot afford to spend weeks convincing each person individually." Their next contact was Danny Wright, the farmer in Kansas. He had been a weapons specialist during the war, responsible for maintaining and modifying the energy weapons that the colonists had used against hegemony forces. When they arrived at his farm, they found him working on a modified plasma cutter that looked suspiciously similar to colonial military equipment. "I have been experimenting," Danny admitted when they asked about the device. "The dreams have been getting stronger, and I wanted to be prepared." He led them to a workshop behind his house where he had been building weapons and defensive systems. The equipment was crude but functional, based on principles he had learned during the war. "How long have you been doing this?" Lisa asked. "About a year," Danny said. "I started having the dreams and I knew they were coming back. I tried to contact some of the other survivors, but most of them thought I was crazy." General Blake examined one of Danny's modified weapons. "This could be very useful. Would you be willing to share your designs with other members of our group?" "Of course," Danny said. "That is what I have been hoping for. We need to work together if we are going to have any chance." Their recruitment efforts were not always successful. 2 of the survivors they contacted refused to get involved, preferring to take their chances with the government's protection. One had developed severe psychological problems and was not capable of helping with anything. Another had died in a car accident 3 years earlier. But for every person who refused to help, 2 others agreed to join their cause. By the end of the month, they had assembled a core group of 23 veterans with diverse skills and experience. They included engineers, weapons specialists, communications experts, pilots, and tactical planners. Colonel Stone arranged for the group to meet at an abandoned military facility in Nevada. The base had been decommissioned 10 years earlier, but it still had working power and communications systems. More importantly, it was isolated and secure, far from any civilian populations. Lisa arrived at the facility on a hot afternoon in late summer. She had not seen this many colonial veterans in one place since the evacuation from Kepler 442. The sight of familiar faces brought back memories of the war, both good and bad. Jack Martinez was setting up a workshop in one of the old maintenance buildings. He had brought sophisticated testing equipment and technical manuals that he had somehow acquired from his teaching position. Susan Cole was establishing a secure communications center in the old command building. Danny Wright was displaying his weapons designs to a group of interested engineers. General Blake called everyone together in the main briefing room that evening. The room was old and dusty, but it felt familiar to the veterans who had attended countless military briefings during the war. "Thank you all for coming," the general said. "I know this decision was not easy for any of you. You have all built new lives for yourselves, and you are taking a significant risk by being here." He gestured to Colonel Stone, who activated a large display screen at the front of the room. The screen showed the latest intelligence data about hegemony activity in the solar system. "The situation is worse than we initially thought," Colonel Stone said. "Our analysis indicates that the invasion will begin within the next 2 to 3 months. We have very little time to prepare." She showed them updated sensor readings and intercepted communications. The hegemony was building up forces near Jupiter and sending scout missions to survey Earth's defenses. They were being systematic and thorough, just as they had been during the colonial wars. "What about official government response?" asked Sarah Kim, a former pilot who now worked as an air traffic controller. "Have they accepted the evidence yet?" General Blake shook his head. "The official position is still that these are sensor anomalies or natural phenomena. The Joint Chiefs refuse to consider the possibility of an alien invasion." "What about the president?" asked another veteran. "The president has not been briefed on the situation," Colonel Stone said. "The intelligence community has decided that the information is too sensitive and too unverified to present to the civilian leadership." Lisa felt anger rising in her chest. The same government that had sent them to fight the hegemony 15 years ago was now refusing to acknowledge that the threat existed. Thousands of people had died in the colonial wars, and their sacrifice was being ignored. "So we are on our own," she said. "Not entirely," General Blake said. "I have been building support within the military for several years. There are people in key positions who remember the colonial program and understand what we are facing." He showed them organizational charts and contact lists for sympathetic personnel in all branches of the military. Many of them were in technical positions where they could provide equipment and information. Without attracting attention, we also have access to some of the research that was conducted during the colonial program, Colonel Stone added. Weapons designs, tactical manuals, and technical specifications that were supposed to be destroyed. Jack raised his hand. "What about manufacturing? We can design new weapons, but we need facilities to build them. We have identified several private defense contractors who could produce equipment for us," the general said. "They think they are working on classified military projects, which is technically true." Susan spoke up from the back of the room. "What about coordination with regular military units? When the invasion begins, we will need to work with conventional forces. That is one of our biggest challenges," Colonel Stone admitted. "Most military commanders have no knowledge of hegemony tactics or technology. We will need to find ways to advise them without revealing our existence." The group spent the next several hours discussing operational plans and organizational structure. They divided into specialized teams based on their skills and experience. The weapons team would focus on developing new armaments. The communications team would establish secure networks. The intelligence team would monitor hegemony activity and try to predict their invasion plans. Lisa found herself appointed as the overall tactical coordinator, responsible for developing defensive strategies and coordinating operations between the different teams. It was a role she had played during the later stages of the colonial war, and she felt comfortable with the responsibilities. As the meeting broke up, Danny Wright approached her with a concerned expression. "Lisa, there is something else we need to discuss. Something I have not told anyone else." "What is it?" "The dreams I have been having are not just about the invasion," Danny said. "They are also about specific targets. I keep seeing the same locations being attacked over and over again." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "What locations?" "Major cities, military bases, power plants, communication centers," Danny said. "It is like I am seeing their target list." Other veterans had begun to gather around them, drawn by the serious tone of their conversation. Susan Cole joined the group, followed by Jack Martinez and several others. "I have been having similar dreams," Susan said. "I keep seeing attacks on satellite control centers and internet hubs. I have been dreaming about attacks on nuclear power plants," said another veteran. "Always the same plants, always the same sequence of attacks." Lisa looked around at the group of survivors. If they were all receiving the same visions, it meant that their connection to hegemony technology was stronger than anyone had realized. It also meant that they had access to information that could save millions of lives. "We need to document everything," she said. "Every dream, every vision, every detail you can remember. If we can predict their targets, we can warn people and prepare defenses." General Blake overheard the conversation and joined them. "How accurate do you think these visions are?" "During the war, my combat intuition was right about 90% of the time," Lisa said. "If multiple people are having the same visions, the accuracy the abandoned military facility in Nevada became a hub of intense activity over the following weeks. The veteran survivors worked around the clock to transform the old base into a functional command center. They repaired communication systems, established secure workshops, and created living quarters for the growing number of people who were joining their cause. General Blake had managed to recruit additional military personnel from active duty units. These new allies did not know the full scope of the operation, but they believed they were participating in a classified defense program. They brought with them access to current military equipment and intelligence networks that the veterans needed. Lisa spent most of her time in the Tactical Planning Center, a converted briefing room where she and her team analyzed hegemony invasion patterns and developed countermeasures. The walls were covered with maps, charts, and photographs showing potential target locations across the globe. "The pattern is becoming clearer," said Captain Tom Rodriguez, a former colonial intelligence officer who now worked as a police detective in Texas. "They will hit communication satellites first, then power grids, then transportation networks." Susan Cole looked up from her bank of communication equipment. "I have been monitoring military radio frequencies, and there are some unusual patterns. Some units are being moved to positions that do not make sense from a conventional defense standpoint." "What kind of positions?" Lisa asked. "Units with anti-aircraft capabilities are being deployed to areas with no strategic value," Susan said. "It is almost like someone in the military command structure knows what is coming and is trying to prepare." General Blake walked into the room carrying a secure phone. His expression was grim. "We have a problem. I just received word that there will be a security inspection of several military facilities next week, including some of the bases where our allies are stationed." Colonel Stone looked up from her intelligence reports. "Do you think they suspect something?" "It is possible," the general said. "Or it could be routine security. Either way, we need to be prepared for increased scrutiny." Lisa studied the deployment maps that Susan had prepared. "If they discover our allies in the military, we lose our access to equipment and intelligence. We need to establish independent capabilities." Jack Martinez entered the room carrying a tablet computer. He had been working with Danny Wright's weapons team to develop new equipment based on colonial war technology. "We have made some progress on that front. The first batch of modified pulse rifles is ready for testing." He showed them images of weapons that looked like conventional assault rifles but had been modified with energy capacitors and plasma discharge systems. "They are not as powerful as the weapons we used during the war, but they should be effective against hegemony personal armor." "How many can we produce?" Lisa asked. "With our current manufacturing capacity, about 50 per month," Jack said. "But if we could access more advanced facilities, we could increase that to several hundred." General Blake made notes in his secure notebook. "I may be able to arrange access to additional manufacturing through some of my contacts in the defense industry, but we will need to be very careful about how we explain the requirements." The secure phone in the general's hand buzzed with an incoming message. He read it quickly, and his expression grew even more serious. "We have another problem. The deep space monitoring stations have detected a significant increase in hegemony activity near Mars." Colonel Stone activated the main display screen and pulled up the latest sensor data. The screen showed dozens of red dots moving in formation around the red planet. "This is a much larger force than we expected. They are assembling an invasion fleet." Lisa counted the contacts on the screen. "How many ships are we looking at?" "At least 200, Colonel Stone said. "Possibly more." Our sensors cannot penetrate their stealth systems completely. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. 200 ships was a massive invasion force, far larger than anything the colonists had faced during the war. Even with all their preparations, Earth's defenses would be overwhelmed. We need to contact more people, Lisa said. Not just veterans, but anyone with relevant skills. Scientists, engineers, pilots, anyone who can help. That increases our security risk, General Blake pointed out. The more people who know about the operation, the greater the chance of discovery. We are past the point of worrying about security, Lisa said. If we do not have enough people to mount an effective defense, it will not matter whether the government discovers us or not. Sarah Kim, the former pilot, spoke up from her position at the communications console. I have contacts in the civilian aviation industry. Pilots, mechanics, air traffic controllers. Many of them are veterans of conventional military service. What about the aerospace industry? Jack asked. There are people working on satellite technology and space systems who might be able to help. Susan Cole pulled up a list of contacts on her computer. I have been maintaining informal contact with some former colleagues from the space program. They might be willing to help if we can convince them the threat is real. Lisa looked at the sensor data, showing the hegemony fleet near Mars. The alien ships were maintaining a defensive formation, while more vessels continued to arrive. They were taking their time, building up overwhelming force before beginning their attack. How long before they move against Earth? She asked. Colonel Stone ran some calculations based on the movement patterns. Based on their current rate of deployment, I estimate 6 to 8 weeks before they begin the assault. That is not enough time to recruit and train a large number of new people, General Blake said. We need to focus on the most critical capabilities. Lisa walked to the tactical display and studied the maps of potential target locations. The key is not to stop their initial assault. That is impossible with the forces we have. The key is to survive it and then make them pay for every mile of ground they take. She pointed to several locations on the map. We need to establish hidden supply caches and communication nodes in areas that are likely to survive the initial bombardment. Remote locations away from major cities and military bases. What about coordination with regular military units? Captain Rodriguez asked. When the invasion begins, there will be chaos and confusion. How do we provide assistance without revealing ourselves? We use the dreams, Lisa said. If we can predict their attack patterns, we can position ourselves to provide support at critical moments. We make it look like lucky coincidences and good timing. Susan looked up from her communications equipment. I have been working on a secure communication system that piggybacks on existing cellular and internet networks. Even if they destroy the main communication satellites, we should be able to maintain contact between our teams. What about weapons and equipment? Danny Wright asked. We have enough modified weapons for our core team, but if we recruit more people, we will need more firepower. Jack consulted his tablet. I have been working on simplified designs that can be manufactured using common industrial equipment. The performance is not as good as our advanced weapons, but they can be produced quickly and in large quantities. General Blake received another message on his secure phone. There is some good news. I have been contacted by a group of retired military officers who have been conducting their own investigation into unusual space activity. They want to meet with us. How many people? Lisa asked. About 30 officers ranging from colonel to general rank. All of them have top-secret clearances and experience with classified programs. Can we trust them? I have worked with several of them over the years, the general said. They are good people who care about defending the country, but they do not know about the colonial program. Lisa considered the implications. Bringing in senior military officers could provide access to resources and personnel that they desperately needed, but it would also mean revealing the existence of the colonial program and the true nature of the hegemony threat. We do not have a choice, she said finally. We need their help and they deserve to know what they are facing. Colonel Stone agreed. The time for secrecy is over. If we are going to save Earth, we need to work with anyone who is willing to help. The group spent the rest of the evening planning for the meeting with the retired officers. They would need to present a complete briefing on the hegemony threat, including evidence from the colonial wars and current intelligence about the invasion fleet. As the meeting broke up, Lisa found herself standing alone in the tactical planning center, looking at the maps and charts that covered the walls. In a few weeks, all of these carefully planned defensive positions and supply caches would be put to the test. Earth was about to face the greatest threat in human history, and a small group of forgotten veterans was the planet's best hope for survival. She thought about her simple life as a mechanic, fixing cars and trucks and trying to blend in with normal people. That life was over now, replaced by the familiar rhythm of military planning and preparation. She was a soldier again, whether she wanted to be or not. But this time was different. This time they were not fighting to defend. The attack came sooner than anyone expected. Lisa was in the communications center reviewing intelligence reports when every alarm in the facility began blaring simultaneously. Susan Cole was at her monitoring station, frantically adjusting controls and trying to make sense of the data streaming across her screens. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace, Susan announced, her voice tight with controlled panic. They are appearing all over the solar system. This is it. Lisa rushed to the main tactical display where Colonel Stone was coordinating with their deep space monitoring stations. The screen showed dozens of red dots materializing near Earth, the Moon, and the major satellites. The hegemony had begun their invasion with a coordinated strike across multiple fronts. What about the main fleet near Mars? Lisa asked. Still there, Colonel Stone replied. This appears to be an advance force designed to cripple our communications and early warning systems. General Blake burst into the communications center, still putting on his uniform jacket. How much warning did we get? None, Susan said. They appeared without any advance indication. Our deep space sensors detected nothing until they were already here. The tactical display updated to show the first wave of attacks. Hegemony ships were targeting communication satellites, GPS systems, and early warning radar installations. Earth's technological infrastructure was being systematically destroyed within the first hour of the invasion. Are our people in position? Lisa asked. Colonel Stone checked her status board. Most of our field teams are deployed, but we are having trouble maintaining contact. The hegemony jamming is more effective than we expected. Lisa had anticipated this problem. The aliens always began their assaults by isolating their targets and preventing coordinated responses. Switch to the backup communication system. Susan, activate the mesh network. Susan's fingers flew over her keyboard as she brought online the distributed communication system they had been developing. Instead of relying on centralized satellites, the system used thousands of small nodes that could relay messages through multiple paths. Network is active, Susan announced. We have contact with 17 field teams. The main display updated to show friendly forces in green. Lisa was relieved to see that most of their teams had survived the initial assault and were in position to respond. But she could also see that several teams were missing, either destroyed or cut off from communication. Field Team 7 is reporting contact with Hegemony ground forces, Colonel Stone announced. They are requesting immediate support. Field Team 7 was positioned near a major power plant outside Denver. According to their intelligence, the Hegemony would attempt to capture the facility intact to use its power generation capacity for their own operations. Who do we have in that area? Lisa asked. General Blake checked his tactical maps. Field Team 9 is about 20 miles away, but they only have 12 people and limited heavy weapons. Send them anyway, Lisa said. Team 7 cannot hold that position alone. She activated her personal communicator and contacted Captain Rodriguez, who was leading Field Team 9. Tom, we need you to move to support Team 7 at the Denver power plant. Hegemony ground forces are moving in. Copy that, Rodriguez replied. We are en route. ETA 30 minutes. The next few hours were a blur of coordinated chaos. Hegemony forces were attacking critical infrastructure across the globe, but they were meeting unexpected resistance from the veteran teams. The aliens had expected to face only conventional military forces with no knowledge of their tactics or technology. Field Team 3 has successfully repelled an attack on the communication center in Virginia, Colonel Stone reported. They used Danny's modified pulse weapons to penetrate Hegemony personal armor. Team 12 reports that they have captured intact Hegemony equipment from a downed scout ship, added Susan. They are requesting extraction for technical analysis. Lisa felt a surge of hope. Their preparations were paying off. The veteran teams were not only surviving the initial assault, but they were inflicting casualties and gathering intelligence that could be crucial for the larger battle to come. But the news was not all good. We have lost contact with Teams 4 and 15, Colonel Stone announced grimly. Last reported positions were near military bases that have been completely overrun. The tactical display showed the expanding areas of hegemony control. The aliens were following their predicted pattern, securing key facilities and establishing defensive perimeters around them. But their advance was slower than it had been during the colonial wars. They are being more cautious, Lisa observed. They did not expect organized resistance this early in the invasion. General Blake was monitoring military radio frequencies from his communication station. Conventional forces are responding better than expected, too. Someone in the Pentagon is making good tactical decisions. Who is in charge of the military response? Lisa asked. General Patricia Hayes, Blake replied. She is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I do not know her personally, but she has a reputation for being very competent. Lisa made a note to research General Hayes later. If the conventional military was going to be effective in the larger battle, they would need leadership that could adapt quickly to fighting an alien enemy. The secure phone buzzed with an incoming message from one of their field teams. General Blake read it aloud. Field Team 6 reports that they have intercepted hegemony communications. The aliens are requesting reinforcements at 3 separate locations. Which locations? Lisa asked. Blake consulted his tactical maps. The nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania, the aerospace facility in Texas, and the military command center in Colorado. Those are all locations where our teams are providing support to conventional forces, Colonel Stone observed. We are having more impact than the hegemony expected. Lisa studied the tactical display, looking for patterns in the hegemony deployment. The aliens were being forced to commit more resources to secure objectives that should have been easy targets. This meant fewer resources available for follow-up attacks. We need to keep the pressure on, she said. Order all field teams to increase their harassment operations. Hit supply convoys, communication nodes, anything that will slow down their consolidation. The next crisis came when Susan detected a massive energy buildup near the moon. Something big is happening up there, she announced. I am reading power signatures consistent with a major hegemony weapon system. The main display switched to show the lunar vicinity. A large alien vessel had taken position near the moon and was charging what appeared to be some kind of planetary bombardment weapon. How long until it is ready to fire? Lisa asked. Susan ran calculations based on the energy readings. Maybe 20 minutes. If they fire that thing at Earth, it could destroy an entire city. Do we have any assets that can reach it? General Blake asked. Colonel Stone checked her status boards. Negative. All our teams are ground-based. We have no space-based weapons or ships. Lisa felt frustration building in her chest. This was exactly the kind of situation where the limitations of their improvised defense became apparent. They could fight hegemony ground forces effectively, but they had no way to counter threats from space. The solution came from an unexpected source. I am receiving a transmission from the International Space Station, Susan announced. They say they have a plan to neutralize the lunar weapon. The transmission was from Dr. Rachel Green, a physicist who was conducting research aboard the space station. She had been monitoring the hegemony energy buildup and believed she could disrupt it, using the station's experimental particle beam system. The beam was designed for materials research. Dr. Green explained over the radio. But if we can modify the focusing system and boost the power output, it might be able to interfere with their weapons' targeting sensors. How long do you need? Lisa asked. 15 minutes for the modifications, maybe 5 minutes to charge the system. That left them with almost no margin for error. Do it, Lisa said. We will coordinate ground operations to provide maximum distraction. She activated the general communication channel and contacted all field teams simultaneously. All units, this is command. In 15 minutes, we need maximum harassment operations against all hegemony positions. Make as much noise as possible and keep their attention focused on Earth. The next 15 minutes were the longest of Lisa's life. Field teams across the globe launched coordinated attacks against hegemony positions, creating chaos and confusion that forced the aliens to respond with defensive measures. Meanwhile, Dr. Green worked frantically to modify the space station's particle beam system. Modifications complete, Dr. Green announced with 2 minutes to spare. Charging the beam now. Hegemony weapon is almost ready to fire, Susan reported. Energy levels are approaching critical threshold. Fire when ready, Lisa ordered. The particle beam from the International Space Station was invisible to the naked eye, but its effects were immediately apparent on the sensor displays. The hegemony weapon's energy signature fluctuated wildly, then collapsed completely as its targeting systems were overwhelmed by interference. "Direct hit," Dr. Green announced triumphantly. "Their weapon is offline." The hegemony ship near the moon began moving away from Earth, apparently abandoning its bombardment mission. Lisa felt the main hegemony fleet arrived at Earth like a storm of metal and energy that blotted out the stars. Hundreds of alien warships took positions around the planet, their weapons trained on major population centers and military installations. For the first time in human history, Earth faced an enemy that could destroy civilization itself. Lisa watched the invasion unfold from the command center in Nevada, coordinating defensive operations across the globe. The conventional military forces were fighting bravely, but they were being systematically overwhelmed by superior technology and numbers. Cities were falling one by one as hegemony ground forces established control over critical infrastructure. "We have lost contact with the Pentagon," Colonel Stone reported grimly. "The hegemony has taken control of most major military command centers." "What about regional commands?" Lisa asked. "Still fighting, but they are isolated and running low on supplies," Stone replied. "Without central coordination, they cannot mount an effective counterattack." General Blake looked up from his communication station. "I have been monitoring military frequencies. Some units are requesting assistance from unknown friendly forces. They are describing tactics and weapons that match our field teams." Lisa felt a surge of pride. Her veterans were making a difference, even if the conventional forces did not know who was helping them. "What is our current status?" Susan Cole consulted her network displays. 23 field teams still operational. "We have lost contact with 8 teams, but that does not necessarily mean they are destroyed. Hegemony jamming is getting stronger." The tactical display showed the current battle lines across North America. The hegemony controlled most major cities and military bases, but large areas of rural territory remained contested. The aliens were having difficulty securing their supply lines and communication networks because of constant harassment from hidden resistance forces. "They are making the same mistake they made during the colonial wars," Lisa observed. "They are focusing on controlling territory instead of eliminating resistance forces." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the secure communication network. "Command, this is Team 9. We have captured a hegemony command post near Denver. The intelligence we found here changes everything." "What did you find?" Lisa asked. "Invasion plans and fleet deployment schedules," Rodriguez replied. "It looks like they are planning to bring in colonization ships within the next 2 weeks. This is not just a military conquest. They intend to replace the human population." The news sent a chill through the command center. The hegemony had never attempted large-scale colonization during the previous wars. They had been content to strip the colonial worlds of resources and then move on. But Earth was different. They wanted the planet for themselves. "We need to get this information to the remaining military commands," General Blake said. "If they understand the true scope of the threat, they might be willing to coordinate with us." Lisa made a decision that would change the course of the war. "Prepare a comprehensive briefing package. Include everything we know about the hegemony, our experience from the colonial wars, and the intelligence from Team 9. We are going to reveal ourselves to the military." Colonel Stone looked concerned. "That will expose our entire operation. If the government survives this invasion, we could all face charges for violating our secrecy oaths." "If the government survives, I will be happy to face those charges," Lisa replied. "But right now, saving Earth is more important than protecting ourselves." The briefing package was transmitted to every surviving military command center using Susan's distributed communication network. Along with the intelligence, Lisa included tactical recommendations and offers of direct assistance from veteran field teams. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Military commanders who had been struggling to understand their alien enemies suddenly had access to 15 years of hard-won combat experience. Regional commands began coordinating their operations with veteran field teams, dramatically improving their effectiveness. General Patricia Hayes, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was among the first to respond. She was operating from a mobile command center after the Pentagon fell, and she immediately requested a direct meeting with the veteran leadership. "I do not care who you are or where you came from," General Hayes said during a secure video conference. "You obviously know how to fight these aliens, and I need that knowledge to save my planet." Lisa found herself briefing the highest levels of military command on hegemony tactics and technology. She explained how the aliens relied on overwhelming force and superior technology, but could be defeated through unconventional warfare and coordinated resistance. "The key is to make them pay for every mile of ground," Lisa explained. "They expect quick victories and minimal casualties. If we can drag out the fighting and inflict heavy losses, they will eventually withdraw." "How long can they sustain an invasion force this size?" General Hayes asked. "Based on our experience in the colonies, maybe 6 months," Lisa replied. "Their logistics trains are vulnerable to disruption, and their command structure does not adapt well to prolonged resistance. The integration of veteran teams with conventional forces transformed the military situation almost overnight. Human forces that had been retreating and losing ground suddenly began launching effective counterattacks. Hegemony supply convoys came under constant attack from teams that seemed to appear from nowhere and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. Jack Martinez's modified weapons proved crucial in these operations. The pulse rifles could penetrate hegemony personal armor and disable their vehicles, giving human forces a significant advantage in ground combat. Danny Wright's simplified weapon designs allowed conventional troops to be rapidly equipped with effective alien fighting capabilities, but the most important contribution came from the veterans' ability to predict hegemony tactics and movements. Lisa's dreams and visions, combined with intelligence from other survivors, allowed human forces to anticipate enemy operations and position themselves for maximum advantage. Field Team 15 report successful ambush of hegemony reinforcement convoy, Susan announced during a tactical briefing 3 weeks into the invasion. Enemy casualties estimated at over 200. Human casualties 0. Team 7 has destroyed a hegemony communication relay, added Colonel Stone. That entire sector is now cut off from their command network. The cumulative effect of these small victories was beginning to show. Hegemony forces were becoming more cautious and defensive, spending more resources on protecting their positions and supply lines. The rapid conquest they had expected was turning into a grinding war of attrition. The turning point came when veteran teams captured a senior hegemony commander during a raid on their regional headquarters in Texas. Under interrogation, the alien revealed crucial information about fleet deployments and strategic objectives. "They are planning to withdraw their heavy warships," Lisa announced to the Joint Command Staff. "The invasion is not proceeding according to their timeline, and they need those ships for operations in other star systems." General Hayes leaned forward in her chair. "How long do we have?" "According to the prisoner, the fleet will begin withdrawing in 2 weeks," Lisa replied. "But they plan to leave behind occupation forces and continue the colonization effort with a smaller military presence." This intelligence allowed the human forces to plan a coordinated, global offensive designed to inflict maximum casualties on the hegemony before their heavy ships departed. Veteran teams would strike at key installations while conventional forces launched simultaneous attacks across multiple fronts. The offensive began at dawn on a clear spring morning. Human forces attacked hegemony positions around the world, with a coordination and effectiveness that surprised even the aliens. The veterans' knowledge of enemy weaknesses and tactics allowed conventional troops to achieve victories that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Lisa led the assault on the Hegemony Command Center in Nevada, the facility that controlled their operations across the western United States. Her team of veterans moved through the alien defenses like they had been fighting this enemy their entire lives, which in many ways they had. The battle for the command center lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the hegemony forces. Similar victories were reported from around the globe as human forces systematically dismantled the alien occupation infrastructure. By the time the hegemony heavy warships began their withdrawal, Earth's defenders had inflicted such heavy casualties that the remaining occupation forces were unable to maintain control. The alien colonization effort collapsed within days as their isolated garrisons were overrun by human forces that had learned to fight with the skill and determination of veterans. 3 months after the invasion began, the last hegemony forces departed Earth orbit. They left behind a planet that was scarred but not broken, defended by people who had discovered reserves of courage and capability they never knew they possessed. Lisa stood in the Nevada desert outside the recaptured command center. Watching the alien ships disappear into the darkness bemeant of satisfaction. They had prevented a catastrophic ATTK and Pro.